Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a deep dive into the world of behavioral psychology and how it shapes those digital products we use every single day.
Those apps and websites that we just can't seem to put down right.
Exactly. Like, have you ever closed a food delivery app, only to reopen it like 2 minutes later because you just have to have those tacos? Or just find yourself scrolling through like a feed of short videos and then suddenly, like an hour's gone.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us. And that's behavioral psychology at play. We're often unaware of how much those online actions of ours are subtly influenced by all these psych principles.
So it's like our brains are being secretly manipulated.
Not necessarily manipulated, no. It's more about understanding the why behind what we do online. Why we click, why we scroll, why we see that limited time offer, and we suddenly need those shoes.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So where do we even begin to unpack all of this? What exactly is behavioral psychology, especially when we're talking about the digital world?
Well, in the simplest terms, it's the study of how people make decisions, form habits, and interact with technology. And by understanding those things, like cognitive biases, motivation triggers, and habit-forming techniques, well, product managers and designers and marketers, they can all create much more engaging and user-friendly products.
So it's kind of like figuring out how our brains work and then building products that align with those natural tendencies.
Exactly. It's about understanding the user, meeting them where they are, and guiding them towards those desired actions.
And you mentioned that this isn't about tricking users, right?
Yeah.
So what's that line between ethical design and straight up manipulation?
Yeah, that's a super important distinction. Let's take, for example, a language learning app like Duolingo. It uses progress bars and streaks to visually represent your progress, encouraging you to keep learning and hit those goals, right?
Yeah, I see that all the time.
Right. So that's considered ethical design because it's actually helping those users.
Yeah.
But then you have those dark patterns, things like making it ridiculously hard to cancel a subscription.
Oh, yeah. I hate when they do that.
It's the worst. Those are manipulative and ultimately harm the whole user experience.
Definitely. Those always leave me feeling kind of tricked and annoyed, honestly.
I hear you. It's all about trust. So how to walk that line then? How do we create products that are, motivating users in a healthy way and encouraging positive habits, but without resorting to those sneaky tactics?
Right, because you want people to genuinely enjoy using your product, not feel trapped by it.
Exactly. One of those fundamental models for understanding behavior is the FOG behavior model. It states that for a behavior to actually occur, 3 elements have to converge at the same time.
What are those?
Motivation, ability, and a trigger. So think about something as simple as checking a notification on your phone, right? You've got the motivation, maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's FOMO, and then you have the ability because it's as easy as just, tapping the screen. And then there's that trigger, that little red notification badge.
I see. So you need all 3 of those things working together for the behavior to happen.
Yeah. If any one of those 3 is missing, you're much less likely to actually check that phone.
So thinking as designers then, they need to make sure they're providing that right motivation, making the action super easy, and then giving people that right trigger.
Exactly. It's about understanding those psychological levers and using them to guide user behavior.
That makes sense. But then how do some of those products manage to make those really sticky habits, the ones where you find yourself checking an app even when you hadn't planned to?
To understand that, we can turn to the hooked model. It suggests that habits are formed in a 4-stage cycle: a trigger, an action, a variable reward, and then an investment.
Ooh, okay, break that down.
Okay, let's use Instagram as our example. So you get a notification, that's your trigger.
Right.
Then you open the app to, see who liked your photo, that's the action. Then you get that unpredictable dopamine hit from seeing all the likes, that's that variable reward. And then, you post more content so you can just keep those likes coming, and that's your investment.
So it's that element of surprise then, the not knowing what you'll get, that keeps us coming back for more.
Exactly. That's the power of that variable reward. It taps into our brain's reward system, keeping us engaged and, wanting more.
I'm starting to see how this all works now. It's
Yeah.
those apps are playing on our innate desire for those rewards.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about motivation. There's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and both are super important when you're designing a digital product.
Okay, tell me about those two. What's the difference, and how can we use both of them to keep users engaged?
All right, so intrinsic motivation, that comes from within, right? It's the enjoyment or that sense of accomplishment you get from doing something that you just find inherently interesting or meaningful.
Yeah.
Now, extrinsic motivation, that comes from external rewards, so things like points or badges or even like social recognition. Think of Fitbit. They do a really good job of mixing both.
So, like, the intrinsic motivation is you're wanting to get healthier, but the app adds in those extra things like badges and challenges to, like, keep you motivated.
Exactly. You nailed it.
Cool. Okay, so it's about finding that sweet spot where the activity itself is, like, rewarding, but you're also getting those little pats on the back along the way.
Yeah, you got it. Now, can we talk about the dopamine effect for a minute? You mentioned it earlier when we were talking about variable rewards.
Yeah, how does that all tie into digital products?
Well, dopamine is this neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. And a lot of digital products, they become experts at, triggering those dopamine releases, often through clever reward systems, right? And those reward systems, there's two main types: fixed rewards and variable rewards.
Okay, so what's the difference?
Fixed rewards are predictable, like, for example, when Netflix automatically plays the next episode. But variable rewards, those are the real hook.
Why is that?
Because you don't know what you're going to get. Think about TikTok, right? Each swipe is like a gamble.
Oh, I see.
You could get a hilarious video, a totally boring one, or something like truly inspiring. And that unpredictability keeps you swiping and swiping, chasing those dopamine hits.
Okay, I can definitely relate to that. But it sounds like there could be a dark side to this too. Could these reward systems become, like, too addictive?
Definitely, definitely. When those variable reward systems are designed irresponsibly, it can totally lead to, like, compulsive usage and some negative consequences. So as product designers, we got to be super aware of this and make sure that we are using these powerful tools ethically.
So how can we make sure we're doing that? Where do we even go from here?
Well, a good place to start is by understanding how people make decisions when they are online. And that's where cognitive biases come in.
Cognitive biases? You mean those mental shortcuts that can sometimes, like, lead us to make kind of irrational decisions?
Yeah, exactly.
What role do they play in all of this digital product design?
They play a huge role. Products are actually very good at leveraging those biases to influence our behavior. Let's start with loss aversion, the idea that people hate losing something way more than they like gaining something of equal value.
Okay, yeah.
Have you ever noticed how many products use those limited time deals and expiring discounts?
Oh, all the time. Like this weekend only.
Yeah.
Or sale ends soon.
Exactly. They're tapping into your fear of missing out.
That's totally why I feel that urge to buy something when I see that only 2 left in stock message on, like, Amazon.
Yes. It's playing on that fear of missing out, which is super tied to another bias, the scarcity effect. Things seem more desirable when they're, like, rare or exclusive.
Okay, so they're basically making something seem more valuable because it's less available.
Exactly. Think about, like, invite-only platforms or those limited edition products,
That makes sense. So what happens when users are faced with, like, way too many choices? How do you help them actually decide?
Well, that's called choice paralysis, and it's another one of those common biases. To combat that, digital products will often, like, simplify those choices, like offering default options or those limited pricing plans, or even by just revealing information a little at a time. So instead of overwhelming you with, a million options, they present a curated selection, or they just break down that decision-making process into smaller steps.
Yeah, that does make it a lot less stressful to choose.
Right. And Apple, they do this really well with their product lineup.
That's true. What other cognitive biases should we be aware of?
Well, another one is anchoring bias. It's the tendency to, like, rely too heavily on that first piece of information you see. So this is often used in pricing strategies, things like originally $499, now $299.
Yeah, I fall for that all the time.
I know, me too. That original price becomes your anchor, making that discounted price seem like way more appealing.
So it's all about how you frame those choices to change how we think about what's valuable.
You got it. Are you ready for another one?
Hit me.
Okay, how about the endowed progress effect? It basically explains why we're more likely to actually finish something if we feel like we've already made some progress.
Oh, I get it. Like those pre-filled progress bars, they make you feel like you're already on your way.
You got it. Think about that LinkedIn profile strength meter. It encourages you to just keep adding information until you hit that 100%.
Makes you feel like you're almost there. Okay, what else?
All right, we also going to talk about social proof and reciprocity. These are like really fundamental principles of human behavior.
Social proof is when we're more likely to do something if, like, we see other people doing it, right? Like all those testimonials and star ratings on websites.
Yes. And reciprocity is the idea that we feel, obligated to return favors. So if a company gives us a free trial or a discount, we're more likely to become paying customers.
It's like that feeling of obligation.
Exactly. It's powerful stuff.
Okay, so to sum up, these cognitive biases, they're like powerful tools that designers can use to shape, like, how users behave. But as we've been talking about, it's really important to use them ethically.
Couldn't agree more. As product designers, we have this responsibility to help users make informed decisions, but without resorting to manipulation.
So much to think about. Now that we have a better understanding of how users actually make decisions and how all those psychological principles are applied, I want to explore that whole idea of engagement and retention. Like, how do you keep users coming back for more? Not just in the short term, but over the long haul.
Let's dig into it. It's more than just like those quick tricks or those dopamine hits. We're talking about creating genuine value and that positive reinforcement to keep those users engaged for the long term.
So it's like thinking beyond those initial bursts of, like, excitement. It's about designing for that long-term stickiness, those experiences that really have some staying power, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, remember that endowed progress effect we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, the one with the pre-filled progress bars.
Yeah, that one. Well, that plays a huge role here, too. Think about LinkedIn, for instance.
Okay.
They want users to, complete your profiles because it makes the platform more valuable for everyone, right?
Right. The more complete profiles there are, the more useful it is for everyone.
Exactly. So they use that profile strength meter to kind of nudge you along, showing you how close you are to hitting that all-star status.
So it's like you get a head start and it makes you feel like you're already on your way, even if you've barely done anything.
Exactly. Another really powerful technique is using what we call micro commitments, those small, almost effortless actions that can build momentum and eventually lead to those bigger commitments.
Okay, give me an example.
Like those start with just one lesson prompts you see on Duolingo.
Oh, yeah, I see those all the time.
Right. They lower the barrier to entry and make it way easier to start forming a habit.
Yeah, it's definitely less intimidating than being faced with this huge task from the get-go.
Right. And once you're in, they slowly start introducing those new features and options.
Oh, that's smart.
It's all about easing you into the whole experience.
Okay, that makes sense. So you've got those micro commitments, helping to build those habits. What about a user's sense of identity? Can you use that for engagement too?
Oh, absolutely. That's where the identity effect comes in. People are much more likely to stick with products that align with their values or their aspirations or just how they see themselves in general.
So it's about appealing to who they are or who they want to be.
Yeah, exactly. Think about Spotify Wrapped. It's not just a summary of your listening habits, right?
Okay.
It's reinforcing your identity as, a music lover with unique taste.
It's like they're saying, this is who you are as a music fan, which makes you feel good. You feel seen. I've also noticed that a lot of fitness apps will refer to their users as athletes, even if they're just starting out.
Exactly. It's creating that sense of belonging. It makes you feel like you're part of something bigger.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all works. Now, what about social proof and reciprocity? I feel like those come into play here too, right?
Oh, for sure. They're still super relevant, even when we're talking about long-term engagement. Think about Strava, that fitness tracking app.
Oh, yeah, I use that one.
Me too. It's a great example because they really encourage you to share your workouts and cheer each other on.
Yeah, it's super motivating to see what your friends are doing. And it creates a sense of camaraderie.
Totally. It's like having this built-in support system.
Okay, now before we move on, can we talk about the peak end rule for a minute? I think that's important to understand.
Oh, absolutely. It's a really crucial concept. The peak end rule basically says that our memories of an experience are mainly shaped by two things: the most intense moment and the final moment.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not about every single interaction, but rather those key moments that really stand out.
Exactly. It's all about those peaks and those endings.
Okay, so how does that apply to digital products?
Well, think about Airbnb. They actually time those review requests to come right after a guest finishes their stay. Hopefully after having that positive and memorable experience.
So they're hoping to capture those good vibes while they're still fresh.
Exactly. They know you're more likely to leave a positive review when those feelings are still at their peak. So, as designers, we got to pay attention to those peak moments in that whole user journey and make sure that they're truly delightful and memorable. And we also have to make sure we nail that final interaction, whether it's, buying something or even like canceling a subscription.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's about leaving them with a positive, lasting impression. Speaking of positive, can we talk about nudges for a bit?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So we touched on nudges a little bit earlier when we were talking about those dark patterns.
Yeah.
Remember?
Vaguely. Can you remind us what exactly a nudge is and then explain that difference between ethical nudging and, like, manipulative design?
Yeah, of course. So a nudge is basically like a gentle push that guides users towards a specific action, but without actually limiting their freedom to choose.
Okay, so it's not forcing them to do anything?
No, not at all. It's about like making that desired action easier or more appealing, but without using deception or, being coercive.
This is more like a subtle suggestion?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And ethical nudging is when you align user goals and those business goals in a way that actually benefits everyone involved.
Okay, so everybody wins.
Exactly. One of the most powerful nudging techniques is using defaults.
Defaults, like those pre-selected settings.
You got it.
Oh.
People tend to just stick with that pre-selected option because it just takes less effort.
It's the easiest path.
Exactly. Think about those subscribe to updates boxes that are usually already checked by default, or, Apple's sign in with Apple feature that makes it like super easy to create an account.
Makes sense. So it's like they're suggesting that this is what they think is best for you, but you can always change it if you want to.
Exactly. And that's the key, that transparency. Users should always know they have other options. The problem arises when those defaults are used to, like, trick people into doing things they wouldn't normally do. That's when it becomes a dark pattern. Think about those companies that make it, like, a total nightmare to unsubscribe from their emails or, to cancel a subscription.
Oh, yeah, I hate that. It's so frustrating.
I know, it's the worst. That's not ethical nudging at all. It's just bad design. Okay, now, another way that products can nudge users is through framing and priming.
Can you remind me what those mean?
Yeah, so framing is like presenting information in a way that influences how people perceive it. So like, for example, loss framing, that emphasizes what you stand to lose if you don't take a specific action, while gain framing, that highlights the benefits you'll gain if you do take that action.
It was all in how you word things.
Yeah. It's the difference between, don't miss out on this incredible deal and save 50% on your next purchase.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about priming?
Priming is more about subtly influencing someone's thoughts or feelings by just exposing them to certain stimuli. Think about those messages you see on websites that say, join 1 million happy customers.
So they're trying to make you feel good about choosing their product by associating it with all those, satisfied customers.
Exactly. But remember, both framing and priming can be used ethically or unethically. The goal should always be to, guide users towards making informed decisions, not to deceive or manipulate them.
Got it. So to make sure we're actually using nudges for good, what are some examples of good nudges that benefit everyone involved?
Okay, so good nudges, those are the ones that are transparent and respectful and ultimately help users achieve their goals.
Okay, so they're helpful, not pushy.
Yeah, exactly. Think about things like progress indicators or smart defaults that save time, or even helpful reminders that don't feel, spammy, like those LinkedIn reminders that encourage you to engage with your network.
Oh yeah, those can actually be really helpful, reminding you to reach out to people and keep those connections warm.
Right. So it sounds like the key is to design those nudges in a way that actually add value to, the user experience and not just push them towards that specific action.
Makes sense. Now, I'm curious about the role of AI in all of this. I feel like that's a whole other layer of complexity, right?
Oh, for sure. AI is definitely a game changer. So how about we step into the future now and talk about how AI is transforming the world of behavioral psychology?
Yeah, let's dive in.
AI really is a game changer when it comes to understanding and influencing user behavior. It lets us personalize experiences in a whole new way, predict what people are going to do, and automate those nudges we've been talking about.
It's like having this super smart assistant who can just analyze tons of data and create this perfectly customized experience for each user, right?
Exactly. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah, it's both amazing and kind of scary at the same time, to be honest.
I get it. But let's focus on the good stuff first, those positive ways it's being used. AI is already powering a lot of those products we use every single day, like, those personalized recommendations you get on Netflix, Spotify, or TikTok. Well, that's all AI.
Oh, yeah. Those are pretty spot on most of the time.
Yeah.
What about those prices that seem to, like, magically change based on demand? Like when I'm looking at plane tickets or trying to book an Uber.
Oh, yeah, that's dynamic pricing. And it's all driven by AI algorithms that are constantly analyzing all sorts of data, including, like, your past behavior.
Wow. So they're learning from us all the time. And then there's that predictive search and autofill where, like, Google and Amazon seem to just, like, know what you're looking for before you even finish typing.
Right. It's like they can read our minds.
Exactly. Then those helpful little reminders that, like, pop up at just the right time to keep us on track. It's kind of freaky how well they can anticipate our needs.
It is. And all of that predictive power is what allows for hyper-personalization. So delivering the right message to the right person at exactly the right moment. Like, Duolingo using AI to adjust how difficult your lessons are, or Google Maps suggesting you leave a few minutes early based on traffic and, like, your usual driving habits.
It's like sci-fi stuff, but it's real. Okay, but there's some ethical concerns we have to keep in mind, right?
Oh, absolutely. One of the big ones is the potential for, like, manipulative AI. Those algorithms are designed to keep us engaged, but that doesn't always mean it's actually good for us.
Yeah, like those endless scrolling feeds that can just suck you in for hours.
Yeah, exactly. That's a prime example. And we also got to be careful about privacy concerns,
Yeah.
Making sure user data is handled responsibly. And we also got to watch out for AI bias, which can reinforce existing inequalities or, like, discriminate against certain groups of people.
So it's about using these powerful tools responsibly, not just for profit.
Exactly. The future of behavioral psychology and digital product design, it's definitely going to be AI-driven, but it's up to us to make sure these technologies are used ethically, to create experiences that are actually good for people.
So it's all about making sure technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
Well said.
Okay, so we've explored this world of AI and all the, like, mind-blowing possibilities. Let's go back to the brain itself now and talk about the neuroscience of digital product addiction. I feel like so many of us can relate to that feeling of being, like, hooked on certain apps or platforms. What's actually happening in our brains when we feel that way?
It all comes down to dopamine, a neurotransmitter that plays a really big role in motivation, pleasure, and reward learning. A lot of digital products, they've gotten incredibly good at triggering those dopamine releases and in ways that can be, quite addictive.
So it's not just that we like using those products. It's about the anticipation of a reward, like waiting for a delicious meal or knowing you're going to get a present you really want.
That's a great analogy. Dopamine is often called the wanting chemical instead of the liking chemical. It's that anticipation, that feeling of wanting something that promises pleasure, like those variable rewards we were talking about. Think about scrolling through TikTok or checking your Instagram notifications. Each time you do that, you're basically taking a gamble.
So we're like playing a slot machine in our pockets, hoping for that next win, even if it's just a quick feeling of, like, satisfaction.
Precisely. And our brains actually love novelty and surprise, but those aren't the only mental triggers that those products use to, like, keep us coming back for more.
What else is going on? What should we be looking out for?
Well, there's anticipation and FOMO, that fear of missing out. Those delayed notifications on Instagram, the ones that make you wait to see who liked your photo.
Oh, yeah.
That's FOMO at its finest. And that feeling of anticipation, it actually triggers a dopamine release.
So they're playing us.
Totally. And then you've got social validation, a basic human need that these platforms are experts at exploiting. Think of those likes, those comments on Facebook and Instagram. Well, those trigger those dopamine releases too. We're wired to want approval from other people, and these platforms just take advantage of that.
So it's like this never-ending cycle of us looking for approval and getting rewarded for it. It's kind of depressing when you think about it.
I know, it's a bit much. But, there's also the good side. Think about those little bursts of satisfaction you feel when you, like, complete a task or achieve a goal.
Oh, yeah. Those feel good.
Right. That's the power of micro wins and progress loops. Duolingo, they do this really well. Like, they gamify the whole learning process. You get points, badges, encouraging messages, and it all just keeps you going.
Those little wins can be super motivating. What about like those sales tactics that use scarcity and those limited time offers? They always seem to get me.
Yeah, that's the power of time pressure and urgency. Those messages like, only a few left in stock. They create this like sense of urgency and make us act impulsively.
It's hard to resist.
Oh, really?
So all of these mental triggers are basically like tapping into our brain chemistry, playing on our desire for pleasure and reward.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's so fascinating and kind of unsettling at the same time.
Yeah.
So how do we create those positive ethical experiences? How do you design something that's fun and engaging, but without, taking advantage of those dopamine-driven reward systems?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right.
But it starts with being aware of these really powerful tools and making user well-being a priority, instead of just trying to get as much engagement as possible.
Okay, I like that. So how do we actually put that into practice?
Well, first of all, we need to encourage mindful usage, like give those users control over their notifications and let them set limits on how much time they're spending on those apps. Think of Apple's screen time feature. Yeah. It lets you track how much time you're spending on different apps, and you can even set limits on those apps.
It's like a safety net for those of us who tend to go overboard sometimes.
Exactly. Another thing we can do is use those dopamine loops to actually encourage positive behavioral changes, so like fitness apps that reward you for hitting your step goal, or meditation apps that encourage you to practice consistently. They're all using those dopamine hits to help people build healthy habits, not just addictive ones.
It's nice to see those principles being used for something good.
Right. And honestly, the most important thing is to prioritize user well-being. It can be really tempting to focus on those engagement numbers and metrics, but ultimately we have to ask ourselves, are we building products that are good for people, or are we just trying to get them hooked?
That's a really important point. It's about building something that adds value to people's lives, not just keeps them glued to their screens.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Now, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about how behavioral psychology can be used to nudge users toward those good habits, those positive, healthy ones. How do we design products that actually help people improve their lives?
It all comes down to understanding how habits are formed and then using those insights to create experiences that make it easier for people to adopt those healthy behaviors.
So instead of just telling people what they should be doing, we're making it easier to actually do it.
You got it. One really effective technique is using something called implementation intentions. It's about setting those clear and specific goals and then also defining when and where you're going to do it. So instead of just saying, I want to exercise more, you'd say, I'm going for a run every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m.,
I like that. It makes it a lot harder to make excuses.
Right. And another way to do it is by using that habit loop we talked about earlier. Remember that one?
Yeah, the cue, routine, and reward.
Yeah, that one. So that cue is what triggers that habit. The routine is the actual behavior itself, and that reward reinforces it. And those digital products, they can play a really big role in strengthening those loops. Like Headspace, the meditation app, they encourage users to, meditate at the same time every day. And those fitness trackers, they give you badges and trophies for hitting your goal.
Oh, yeah, it's like a game.
Exactly. It makes those healthy behaviors way more fun and rewarding. And commitment devices can be pretty effective too. That's when you pre-commit to doing something, even if it means you might get penalized if you don't follow through.
Oh, interesting. What's an example of that?
Duolingo will charge you a small fee if you miss your daily goal.
Wow, so there are real consequences.
Yeah, those small penalties, they actually motivate people to stick with their commitments.
That's pretty clever. Any other techniques we can use?
Let's see. Oh, you can also leverage what's called the fresh start effect. People tend to be way more motivated to pick up those new habits after big milestones, like a birthday or the start of a new year.
Oh, yeah, those new beginnings.
Exactly. So digital products can encourage users to set goals or try new features at those specific times to take advantage of that.
Oh, that's smart. So it's all about the timing, when you deliver those nudges.
You got it. And finally, we got to make things easier, reduce friction. So the easier it is to do something, the more likely someone is to actually do it. Think about Apple Wallet or those one-click ordering options on Amazon.
They've made it so simple.
Right. But it's super important to use all of these techniques ethically. Remember, we're not trying to trick or manipulate users. We want to empower them to make good choices.
Yeah, it's all about transparency and respect. Can you give us some examples of products that are actually using behavioral psychology for good, in a way that benefits those users?
Oh, tons. Duolingo helps people learn new languages. Fitbit encourages physical activity. Calm promotes mindfulness. And apps like You Need a Budget can help people take control of their finances.
Those are all great examples. This has been such an insightful deep dive. We covered a lot of ground, from those basic principles of behavioral psychology to the power of AI and, the importance of designing ethically. It's incredible how all of these concepts are being used to shape the digital world around us.
I agree. And it's really about being aware of those forces that are shaping our online experiences so we can make more informed choices about the products we use and support those companies that are using these powerful tools for good.
So much to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep questioning that digital world around you.